What's happening, YouTube? Andrew here with Table Talk, and today I'm talking about my favorite board game publishers, the companies, the design houses that when I see games on the shelves or see a game online or on Kickstarter, I want to check it out just because of the publishers behind it. A lot of people look to their favorite board game designers to figure out what games to pick up, but I actually favor looking at the publishers, and these are the publishers I pay attention to the most. Let's get into my top 10. My number 10 publisher is a very recent one with a very interesting niche, and this is Detestable Games. And in my opinion, they are anything but detestable because these are all really easy to learn party games, and they have come out with two of my favorite and most anticipated games coming up based on the classics of Mario Kart and Mario Party, and that is Dodo's Riding Dinos and Pirate Party Pandas. Now, both of those game titles sound like stupid children's TV shows, but they are actually fun spins on those video game classics that you can bring to the tabletop. And why I would want to play Mario Kart or Mario Party on the tabletop more than on the big screen is because as much as luck plays a role in those games, certain people are just going to know Mario Kart and Mario Party better. But this brings everyone together at the same skill level, playing these fun video games or flicking these missiles as you are actually getting to race and party on the table, making an experience unlike any other. And I'm going to continue to look to this publisher for great art and easy to play party games. That is Detestable Games, my number 10 publisher. My number 9 publisher is actually RIP, no longer with us, but the design house behind this publisher is actually coming back in a new form. The former publisher I'm talking about is Funko Games, and what I loved about Funko Games, as much as I detest the stupid Funko Pops, I feel like there's way too many, and I don't know how people spend so much money on them. But the games they came out with as a company were actually really, really great IP games based on a lot of the most popular brand names, movies, and TV shows of today. And they were also all really, really pretty simple to understand strategy games. Now, some of them weren't the greatest board games I've ever played, but I feel like they always lovingly brought the intellectual property to life, that movie, that TV show, with pretty simple rules. Now, they weren't the most strategic, but they also weren't complete luck fests. And a lot of them, I think, hit that just right niche. And the design house behind them was Prospero Hall, where they were formerly with Ravensburger, where they made things like the Disney Villainous series. They then went to Funko Games, where they made games like Fast and Furious Highway Heist, Back to the Future, Back in Time. And they are now coming out with a new publisher called Tempest Workshop. So I look forward to seeing what they come out with, as I know they're always going to represent brands, movies, and TV shows well, and those are some of my favorite games. And they're going to do it in a simple, easy to understand way with great art, production, and love. Funko Games, now Tempest Workshop. My number 8 favorite publisher is an incredible achievement in and of itself, as it is largely based on one man's work, and this is Red Raven Games. Now, Red Raven Games has some of my favorite art in games. It's this interesting spin on classic fantasy artwork. And Ryan Lockett, the man behind the company, publishes the games. He also makes the artwork. He and his wife produce the music, and they make the stories. And all of his games are about bringing this world he has created to life. And I love that. I love story games, and a lot of his games are story games. I think they have some of the best stories and best worlds of any board games you can get into. So anytime I see this incredible art, I know there's probably going to be story involved and a great world building experience because of the work of Ryan Lockett. That's what makes Red Raven Games my number 8 publisher. My number 7 publisher is kind of a cheat code. It is a pair of publishers. The more popular is KTBG, or Kids Table Board Gaming, but they also have a sister company, Burnt Island Games, which produces more adult strategy games. And both of these companies, I think, just have some of the best art and production of any board games that come out. I always look forward to their Kickstarter pages and just seeing their production and their artwork, and clearly the love that has gone into these games. And it's never over the top. There's not like a bunch of plastic miniatures, but it's always just really cool looks, really cool components, and that's what makes me always want to check out these games. They may not always be my favorite, but games like In Too Deep, Halls of the Mountain King, and even Creature Comforts are just really good medium weight games that have great art and components, making KTBG and Burnt Island Games my number 7 publisher. My number 6 favorite publisher is one of the OGs, and this is Days of Wonder. This is the company behind classics such as Small World, Ticket to Ride, Memoir 44, Five Tribes, and anytime this company releases a new game, which they do very rarely, maybe once a year, it's always a big deal, and I'm always gonna check it out. Most recently, they released Heat Pedal to the Metal, and once again, it shows why this board game publisher is at the top of the heap, because they always have this classic looking, great artwork. They always have really simple, streamlined rule sets, but such a depth of strategy found in other games like Ticket to Ride, Heat, Five Tribes, Small World, where it's not really that complicated, but there's so much depth to be found there, such variability, and it always makes me want to add one of these classics to my collection. That is my number 6 publisher, Days of Wonder. My number 5 favorite publisher is Plaid Hat Games. And Plaid Hat Games, a lot like Red Raven, specializes in building stories and building worlds. As you can tell, I'm a fan of that. But what Plaid Hat Games has done to differentiate itself from the rest of the competition with games like Mice and Mystics, Familiar Tales, Stuffed Fables, Forgotten Waters, Dead of Winter, Chromonauts, Freelancers, and I think they're making a sci-fi version, is their Crossroads system. They do such a good job of making these interesting story points that later on affect the game. They also were the pioneers of using a storybook to use maps instead of reuse tiles, where that's going to be more expensive and you're going to be ultimately limited by the number of tiles you have. But with a book, you can create as many different maps and different types of maps as you want. They also pioneered, really, I think, voice acting apps where instead of having to read a story from a book, it's all there in an app, which saves money, it saves time, it saves you having to read, and you get this awesome story brought to life by professional voice actors, making it a cinematic experience. You can put it on a TV, and these games are all great as you can play around a table, and it's more about the story than actually playing the best mechanically to win. So it ends up being an experience you get to have with other people around the table, unlike almost anything any other company produces. That is why I always look forward to games from Plaid Hat. My number 4 favorite publisher is the most unheard of, I believe, slept on, underrated publisher on this list. They are also relatively newcomers to the space, and this is Arcada Studios. And they have released such games as Arune and Spark Riders 3000. Now, it might sound like I made up both of those games, but I have not, as Arune was really a love letter and a spin on classic dungeon crawlers like Hero Quest, but with way better production, rule sets, variability, and progression, all streamlined through this voice app, which brought story moments and choices into a dungeon crawler. And Spark Riders 3000, which also utilized an app to do a sci-fi adventure where you're cooperatively on the spaceship trying to battle off enemies, and the app also facilitated the story moments there as well. So I feel like Arcada Studios has really figured out how apps can best be utilized to enhance a game, not take over a game, but actually use the app to bring about story points and decisions that you just never could in the physical space. But they also pair it with top-notch physical components and art. They always have awesome plastic pieces, not even necessarily minis, but furniture in their dungeon crawler and doors, or turrets and guns and lasers and shields in their sci-fi game. And really, the production and the art and the stories that this company produces are top-notch. And I look forward to whatever app-enhanced game they come out with next. That's my number 4 publisher, Arcada Studios. My number 3 publisher is IV Studios. I believe based here in Tennessee. And what I love about IV Studios is they bring such amazing graphic design and look to their games. Every time you see one of your games, you're like, whoa. Like, that is unlike any board game I've ever seen. Especially, I've noticed with friends of mine that aren't big into board games, they look at it and they're like, wow, this just like really just looks appealing. It's really well put together package. And they do that because I believe they all have a background in graphic and digital design. They also do a great job of very innovative mechanics. They always base it in mechanics that have existed before, of course, but they always put a unique spin on it, and they always integrate what goes on above the table with people's interactions into their games. They develop such games as Veiled Fate, Mythic Mischief, Moonrakers, Fractured Sky. They're coming out with a game called Blink. And all of these games, whether it be Moonrakers with the negotiation, Veiled Fate with the hidden roles, or Mythic Mischief with the ultimately abstract back and forth competition, they all facilitate tension, negotiation, diplomacy, and table talk that actually affects the game in real time. That, with the incredible look of their games, makes me always want to check out an Ivy Studio game and makes them my number 3 favorite publisher. My number 2 publisher is probably on a lot of people's lists, especially if they like thematic and IP games, and this is CMON, or CMON. Probably one of the biggest board game publishers. A lot of their Kickstarter raised millions upon millions of dollars, but that is because they do a really good job at publishing board games. They were the pioneers of the massive Kickstarter. As good or bad as you may think about that, it's because they learned how to make Kickstarters that were appealing and made people want to pledge their money. Because all of their games always have incredible art, production, some of the best minis, and really integrating IPs, whether they may be original to the board game company or coming from the outside world with things like Marvel, DC, Masters of the Universe. They really study their stuff to integrate that IP best. They've also made their own IPs like Blood Rage, Ankh, Rising Sun, Project Elite, and they bring these worlds to life with incredible minis, incredible productions, and they really know how to get fans excited about a game as they release all the characters in that world that you could ever want. And they always leave you with more than enough content to enjoy that game, making CMON my number 2 favorite publisher. Before I get to my number 1, I want to thank you guys as always for watching, liking, subscribing, commenting, all the generic things YouTubers say. But honestly, unlike a lot of YouTubers, I never expect anyone to watch my videos. I don't put as much time into this as other people. I have very not as great equipment, and I have a lot going on in my real life, and I just always vowed to have balance with that with YouTube. I'd make videos when I could, and I'd put them out when I could. And so I just want to thank you guys as always for watching. That really makes me be the reason why I want to make these videos. Let's get to my number 1. My number 1 is Restoration Games. And what makes Restoration Games my favorite publisher is they go back in time to these really, really cool looking, awesome in concept games from the past that people remember being great, but if you actually played them today, you'd be like, oh my gosh, this is complete luck. This game makes no sense. It's way too long. It's kind of weird and hard to learn. And they streamline it and update with modern day graphics, artwork, and especially the rule sets. And they make these games new and improved for the modern day. They've done this with games like Return to Dark Tower, games like Unmatched, Downforce, Fireball Island, and many, many more, where they bring these games that people always wanted to be great and they actually make them great. Unlike a lot of other publishers that reprint games or maybe do a new edition, but all they do is change the artwork and maybe streamline a rule here or there, this company really restores these games, completely updates the rule sets to make them much easier to understand, much more strategic and engaging. And it always makes me want to check out a Restoration Games project as I see a game people have adored for years and really giving it the treatment it deserves. Making Restoration Games my favorite publisher. I'd love to hear your top 10 favorite publishers in the comments below. And I'm going to catch you guys on the flip side.